The Champi Scout is one of the most controversial and problematic additions to Age of Empires 2 in recent years. It was introduced in the latest DLC as the starting scout and the militia line replacement for the four South American civilizations. Those are the Incas, the Mapuche, the Muisca, and the Tupi. All four of these civilizations will start with a Champi Scout, and then from the barracks, instead of having the militia line, they get access to the Champi line, which means in Dark Age they can make more of the Champi Scout, and then all the way up until Imperial Age, they can create the Elite Champi Warrior. The base concept of the Champi unit line is quite simple. The developers wanted something to fill the role of an Eagle Warrior and a Militia, so they gave the unit stats similar to the Eagle Warrior and also similar to the Militia, kind of a hybrid unit between those two unit lines to make its own unit line that filled both roles. In theory, this makes sense because you're taking an existing concept and just kind of merging it into a new concept, but in practice, it's actually proven to be a balance nightmare. The main reason why it's impossible to balance this unit correctly is because it's the only scout unit that you can make more of in Dark Age, meaning you have to balance it around being your starting scout, which is generally speaking an independent unit that can be, slightly stronger because you only have one of it, and it can scout the map quickly and be a strong, relatively strong early game unit. And then also you have to balance around being your Dark Age military option, which is supposed to be a decently strong unit, but not much stronger than, say, a villager with Loom. So for a generic civilization, this is easy to balance. You have a starting scout, so your scout cavalry. You cannot make more of this until Feudal Age, and then you have the militia that comes out of the barracks. Two different units, two different roles, two different balance situations, two different stat lines. It's completely separated. But for the case of the Champies, it's merged into each other because the Champi Scout they start with is the same unit that you can make more of in Dark Age from your barracks. So now you had to balance the Champi Scout as far as being a scout. It had to be fast, it had to have a good line of sight, it had to be able to explore the map quickly, but then the militia unit is not there, so you have more of the Champi Scout, and so the Champi also had to be kind of strong, decent strength, similar to something like a villager, something like 4 attack, which is what the militia has, and so this is how it was created upon release. However, this initial design was way too strong because having the same stats as a militia or similar stats to militia, as well as the speed similar to a scout, led you to destroy enemy villagers. You'd be able to chase them down, trap them, get across the map really easily, and just completely overwhelm your opponent in Dark Age. This led to the infamous Champi all-ins, which is basically people going 2 or 3 barracks in Dark Age, spamming the Champi Scout and destroying their opponents in Dark Age. Before Feudal Age comes in, the game would be over. The strategy completely took over the rank ladder for a very short period of time. And so naturally the devs saw this and they stepped in immediately. They nerfed the entire unit line heavily. And so the Champi Scouts were nerfed, but also Champi unit line holistically, it was also given a severe round of nerfs. We're talking 7 or 8 nerfs. It was quite a big deal. And due to these pretty heavy-handed nerfs, the all-in stopped, but at the same time the unit felt more fair but also a little bit underpowered. You can argue the unit was very underwhelming after the initial round of nerfs, and so later on the developers gave them a round of buffs, and that's where we're at today. The interesting thing though is that the round of buffs that were given didn't affect the Champi Scout, and so the Champi Scout is basically the same Champi Scout that was there after the first round of nerfs, and so most people, including the developers, thought that this unit was balanced. Even today, most people think this unit is balanced. It's fair, it's a Champi Scout, it does the job, you can make it out of the barracks, but it's not that strong, it's not a balanced nightmare, it's just an overall solid situation for the Champi Scout. And I'm okay with that kind of description, but I've discovered something that I think personally is very, very wrong with specifically the Champi Scout. And so in this video, I'm going to focus specifically on the Dark Age Champi and not on the rest of the unit line. I'm going to share with you my findings, and I'm curious to see what you guys think about the situation. So the Champi Scout is very similar to an Eagle Warrior, as we've established. It has 5 line of sight, which is the same as an Eagle, and in comparison, the Scout Cavalry has 4 line of sight in Dark Age, and the Champi Scout also has 3 attack, which is similar to a Scout Cavalry. And so with 35 HP, it ends up being kind of weaker on paper compared to an Eagle Warrior and also compared to a Scout Cavalry. However, to offset the fact that it's weaker in terms of raw stats, the Champi Scout was given +1 attack versus Scout Cavalry and the Camel Scout, and it was also given +3 attack against Eagle Scouts. This hidden attack bonus that was given to the Champi Scout was a way for the devs to fix the issue that was playing at hand. The fact that it was a Champi Scout, but also your militia replacement from the barracks. This way, your Champi Scout would have bonus damage against the enemy scout, and so it can defend itself against enemy pressure from the initial scout. But then if you make more Champi Scouts from the barracks, you're not decimating villagers, because the Champi Scout after Loom hits is only doing 2 damage to an enemy villager, and so it's a lot harder to bully your opponent and do massive damage in Dark Age. And this seemed like a pretty good fix. In fact, even today, everything seems normal. But to be honest, I've discovered two big issues that the Champi Scout faces, and there's not really a solution to these issues. Like, there's no way to go around it. There's no way to play around these issues. They're just always there, and they end up being extremely problematic for any Champi civilization. The first issue is that it's the slowest of the scouts. The Champi Scout has a base speed of 1.00, which is decent. Like, it's faster than a villager, and it's faster than an archer, even it's faster than a militia, but it's slower than the other scouts available. For example, the Eagle Warrior has a 1.10, and the Scout Cavalry in Dark Age has a 1.20. And so the Eagle and the Scout Cavalry, as well as the Camel Scout as well, are going to be faster than the Champi Scout. Now, there's a very mild problem that comes out, but this is like not a big deal. For example, if you run into the enemy TC with a Champi Scout, because you move slower than some of the other scouts, you have a heavily reduced ability to evade the enemy TC fire. So if you just make a mistake in Dark Age, usually it's going to be lethal. Whereas with the other scouts, if you make a mistake, you can usually kind of dodge some of the enemy TC fire, and so you'll lose some HP, but at least you keep your scout alive for the most part. But of course, this is a very mild problem, and I just felt like I'd mention it just to kind of break the ice around the bigger problems. Of course, you can just argue, okay, just don't make a mistake, just be extra careful with the Champi Scout and don't run into the enemy TC. But okay, fair enough. We won't make that mistake. But if you do, it's certainly a downside to not be able to get yourself out of that sticky situation. But the bigger problem is actually something that you can't avoid no matter how good of a player you are. The Champi Scout can never chase enemy scouts because it's slower than both of them. And more importantly, it can't run away from enemy scouts as well. This means that if you take any amount of damage, say from a villager, say from an enemy scout getting a first hit when you weren't looking, you have no chance to survive. You cannot fight back because now you're weaker than the enemy scout because you took a little bit of damage from an external source, and you cannot effectively run away because you're actually slower than the enemy scouts. And so if you take any amount of damage, your Champi is dead. As soon as the enemy scout gets on you, you can't fight the 1v1 and you also can't run away. So your best play is to fight the 1v1, lose it, but take as much damage away from the enemy scout as possible. The only hope in this situation is to be close enough to your town center so that if you do get, chased by the enemy scout, you might be able to run away in time to save your Champion Warrior and hide under your town center. However, this completely defeats the purpose of having a scout unit in the first place. You're supposed to be independently scouting deep into enemy territory without too much worry of getting chased away by an enemy scout. And so this is a pretty big deal. You could still argue that, okay, you have to avoid any damage from a villager, any damage from an enemy scout. You have to be really vigilant. And if you are, then the Champi is completely safe. It's still fine. There's no issues whatsoever. You just have to be extra vigilant. Okay, I, as someone who likes to kind of push games to their limits, I'm okay with this. Play perfectly, be extra vigilant, and your Champi Scout is completely fine. In principle, I think that's okay. Obviously, for some beginner players, this will be frustrating, but I'm okay with this in principle. But the problem actually gets way worse with the second point here, and this is the part where I'm really not okay with it. So point number 2 is that it's the weakest of all the scouts. So it's not just the slowest, but it's also the weakest. And this didn't make any sense at first, because if you do the math, it seems like the Champi Scout is actually equal in strength to the Camel and the Scout Cavalry, as well as the Eagle Warrior. Let's take a look at how the Champi Scout fares against the Scout Cavalry, for sake of example, because most civilizations will have the Scout Cavalry as their starting scout. So if we compare the two units, this is what happens. 45 divided by 4 will equal 12. Well, it's actually 11 with a decimal, but it's 12 hits. And the math is here: 45, which is the Scout Cavalry HP, divided by 4 damage per hit from the Champi, 3 plus the 1 bonus damage equals 12 hits. And then on the other side, 35, which is the Champi Scout HP, divided by 3, which is the damage from the Scout Cavalry, is also 12 hits. It's 11 plus a decimal, which is 12 hits. Okay, perfect. 12 hits on both sides. If you do it the same math with the Camel Scout, it's 18 hits on both sides, and it looks like it's even. So in this case, whoever hits first should win. And also, if both hit at the same time, it should be a 50-50. Okay, 50-50 sounds fair. However, in practice, the Champi Scout loses 100% of the time. I ran this test 10 times, and I really hope I'm not just unlucky or severely lucky. The Scout unit won all 10 times, and I had the suspicion that if I tried the test more often, the Scout Cavalry will always win the 1v1. And I didn't understand why this was the case. Initially, I thought it was due to the unit's movement speed. Because the Scout Cavalry is moving faster, I thought that meant that it got the hit off faster. But after testing the Eagle Warrior versus the Champi, I realized that couldn't be the case. The Eagle moves at 1.10, which is faster than the Champi Scout, but in that case, the Champi Scout won the fight every time. So it had to be something else. And so I came to the conclusion that this is due to the cavalry unit being larger and the hit coming from higher up. I believe that the hit coming from higher up makes the last hit register a little bit faster than the Champi Warrior's hit, which comes from lower to the ground, which means that the Scout Cavalry will always win the fight due to getting the last hit off first. This is the only thing that makes sense because all other factors are the same. They have the same attack speed, the same reload speed. It's 12 hits on both sides. The movement speed doesn't matter, as we've established with the Eagle Warrior example. So this is the last thing that I can think of. And interestingly, the Champi attack comes from higher up because it's like a right hook type of attack compared to the Eagle Warrior. So going back to that example, the Champi was actually beating the Eagle every single time in their 1v1. And I believe that this was due to the Champi attack coming from higher up. Like I said, it was a right hook type of attack where it swings from higher up, whereas the Eagle Warrior attack is a spear jab, which comes from lower in height to the ground. And so the Champi is actually winning that 1v1 every single time, but the Champi is losing against the cavalry unit, so the Camel Scout and the Scout Cavalry, due to them attacking from higher up. So with all this in consideration, my theory is spot on, but I'm still not 100% sure about it, just because there could be other factors at play that I haven't been considering. And so hopefully some of the smarter folk in our community can shed some light on what's going on here in the comments below. Let me know if my theory is correct, or if you guys know something that I don't, because this is extremely suspicious right now. Either way, the Champi beating the Eagle is nothing to brag about, by the way. It's not a light at the end of the tunnel here. It doesn't create a rock, paper, scissors situation where the Champi's beating the Eagle's beating the Scout, and the Scout's beating the Champi, because in the case of the Champi, it's slower than the Eagle. So even if it wins the 1v1 due to attacking from higher up, you can never actually force the fight onto the Eagle Warrior, and so winning the 1v1 is meaningless because you're slower than it. And so the Champi is left in a situation where if he takes any amount of damage, it will be chased down and killed by any of the other scouts. And even if it doesn't take any damage, it will be chased down and killed by the Scout Cavalry and the Camel Scout. And even if it turns around and fights, you will always lose. Even if you attack at the same time, you always lose, except against the Eagle Warrior, which is like 2 civilizations, and you can't, force the fight into the Eagle. The Eagle can run away, you can't. And so the Champi's in a terrible situation. If you thought this was bad, the situation actually gets worse. I'm sorry, I have no good news for the Champi Scout in this video. It gets worse because all other scouts get a bonus on a certain age in terms of speed or in terms of damage. For example, the Camel and the Scout Cavalry, Camel and Horse, they get extra damage and extra speed upon hitting Feudal Age, and the Eagle Warrior gets extra damage upon hitting Castle Age. The Champi never gets extra stats without an upgrade that costs resources. This means that your situation only gets worse unless you actively invest into the champion line, which is not something that you want to do every single game, at least not in the early game. And so, for example, a practical example here on Arena, you can literally never scout the map without a risk of losing your scout if you have a Champi Scout on Arena. Like if you move out and your enemy finds you, you are dead. You will lose your starting unit 100%. The best thing you can do is either trade, which doesn't really do anything because you trade, lose your scout, enemy loses HP, he will heal his scout, and that's it. You got nothing out of it. If you try to run around and scout the map, okay, you can scout the map until you die. That's probably okay. You can't really run back into your walls because if you do that, the enemy scout can go inside your base and you can't chase him around because you're slower than him. So he will run around your base until he's Feudal Age, get extra stats, kill your Champi, and then maybe even snipe a villager and get extra scouting information inside your base on Arena, which everyone knows is an absolute disaster if that happens. So on Arena, just for like one example here, your Champi is hard losing you the game from the start of the game, and there's not anything you can do about it. Like you literally just can't move out. And if you do, you risk losing your scout immediately if you run into the opponent's scout. And lastly, to make matters worse, in team games, you're basically a sitting duck who can be jumped on by multiple scouts at any time. Super easily, by the way. So this just increases the risk that you face by moving out with your Champion Scout. Since enemy scouts move faster, one of them can block you and the other one can hit you. And so if you run into 2 enemy scouts just by accident, just, by sheer luck, you can't fight back, you can't run away, you can't do anything. You just get blocked and killed. Any other scout can at least fight back, kite, run away a little bit, do something. But the Champion Scout just dies on the spot. Nothing you can do about it. At least the Eagle Warrior or the Eagle Scout, it beats a Scout Cavalry in a 1v1. So if you get caught out, you can just fight. And so in a 1v1, you'd win. And if there's 2 on you, okay, you can kind of kite, run away, trade some damage until you get some backup and you can do something. But the Champion Scout would just die too fast and he's not going to be able to even buy time for his team to come save him. So in conclusion, I really think something ought to be done about this. It feels really unfair to be at such a massive disadvantage with your starting scout and having no counterplay, no way around that disadvantage. It also increases variance in your early game, turning a natural scouting trip into a death sentence should you run into an enemy scout, which of course you can't really control whether it will happen or not. Even if you're trying to be vigilant and running around, enemy scouts as soon as you see them, because they move faster, they can just by accident run into you, and then if they start hitting you, even if you hit at the same time, you will lose 100% of the time with no counterplay and no way to run away from a sticky situation. Also, on a personal note, I hate having built-in attack bonuses in Dark Age. I really feel like that was a band-aid solution by the developers and not something that was well thought out. Putting attack bonuses on the starting scout that are hidden just makes it super confusing for newer players who aren't aware of how these bonuses might work. They might not even be aware of the fact that there are hidden attack bonuses in Age of Empires 2, let alone a hidden attack bonus on their Champi scout with a certain civilization. This would just make it so hard for newer players to navigate these civilizations, and also hard for them to play against them. If they're playing against the Champi scout and they look at the stats, it says 3 damage, but they're taking 4 damage in the early game, it just feels weird and it's going to be confusing for them. So personally, I would really like having this, built-in attack bonus removed in Dark Age as well. And normally I'd like to give my suggestion for an alternative, but in this case, I've spent so much time figuring out why the hell the Champi scout was losing every 1v1 in Dark Age that I'm going to leave it up to you guys in the comments to come up with potential solutions for the situation. Also, for whatever reason, if you feel like there's no issue whatsoever and it's completely fine to lose the 1v1 every single time with the Champi scout, then also let me know in the comments below. I'll personally be hearting the best solutions that I've read from you guys, and I'm really curious to see your input on this really weird situation that the Champi scout is facing. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. I have nothing personal against the Champi scout. I know I ripped on him for about 20 minutes, but it's really just due to how weird and strange the whole thing was. I did a lot of digging and this video took a lot of time, so I really hope you guys enjoyed it. If you guys do want to support my work, I really recommend you check out the Patreon if you guys want the exclusive guides and content to get better than your peers on the rank ladder and also destroy your friends next time you face them in any friendly game. The Patreon is the best way to support me and also get something out of it. You can find a link to it in the description below. And as always, like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.